A tale of how humanity's most unpredictable diplomat prevented an interstellar incident with the Regularians, a species that transformed bureaucratic perfection into an art form and politeness into pure energy by wielding the deadliest weapon in human history: workplace small talk. The Galactic Diplomatic Corps had a saying: when Zephyr Thrix enters a room, protocols exit through the nearest airlock. It wasn't meant as a compliment, but humanity's most catastrophically successful diplomat took it as one anyway. After all, she'd managed to secure 7 impossible treaties, prevent 3 interstellar wars, and accidentally start, then end a revolution through what her superiors termed aggressive informality. Vortex, her AI assistant, projected itself into her office with the digital equivalent of a migraine. Its usually pristine holographic form flickered through shades of bureaucratic beige as it processed the latest diplomatic crisis. Ambassador Thrix. Vortex began, its voice modulating between resignation and barely contained panic. The Regularians have initiated emergency protocols 7 Theta 9. They're threatening to shut down all quantum trade routes in the Carina Sagittarius sector. Zephyr, who was currently attempting to balance a quantum stylus on her nose, barely glanced up. What'd we do this time? Sneeze during their annual silence ceremony? Wear plaid to a striped-only function? Worse. Vortex projected a holographic document that unfolded like an origami nightmare. Someone from the Earth delegation suggested their 47-dimensional filing system could benefit from, and I quote, a quick streamlining. The stylus clattered to the desk. They didn't. They did. With a sticky note. A neon sticky note. High Counselor Prismatix's formal complaint to the Galactic Council ran for 427 pages, each word precisely measured for maximum diplomatic outrage. The Regularians, a species that had somehow transformed bureaucratic perfection into both an art form and their primary energy source, were not merely offended, they were geometrically incensed. They've requested you specifically. Vortex continued, displaying what appeared to be a requisition form written in 17-dimensional calligraphy, with, and again I quote, Zephyr grinned, the kind of grin that made seasoned diplomats check their insurance policies. They requested me? The same me that accidentally introduced Casual Fridays to the Symmetric Conclave? The same you that convinced the Silicon Confederation to adopt group hugs as a formal greeting protocol? Yes. Vortex's hologram briefly displayed what appeared to be a loading bar labeled Calculating Probability of Diplomatic Catastrophe before giving up and showing Wootwo Kiang 2%. Instead, well then, Zephyr said, straightening her chronically crooked tie in a way that somehow made it even more asymmetrical, we shouldn't keep them waiting. Book use a quantum corridor to Regularian space. And Vortex? Yes, Ambassador. Pack the coffee machine. The good one. Vortex's holographic form briefly displayed what might have been a prayer in binary before stabilizing. Ambassador, might I remind you that the last time you introduced non-regulation beverages to a Regularian function, 3 star systems had to be reorganized for proper alphabetical alignment? Exactly. Zephyr winked, already heading for the door. The symmetry lived up to its name in ways that made human architects weep and physicists question their life choices. The Regularian space station was a perfect manifestation of geometric obsession. Its crystalline spires and mathematical arches calculated to 17 decimal places. Even the vacuum of space around it seemed more orderly than usual. Docking request denied, announced the station's AI. Reason: your vessel's approach vector is 0.000000. Please correct and resubmit Form GH459 Delta in triplicate. Zephyr, who was piloting with her feet up on the console, actually smiled. Vortex, show them our credentials. Vortex projected what appeared to be a series of perfectly formatted documents, each pixel aligned with atomic precision. Transmitting now. Though I feel compelled to mention that your current posture violates approximately 37 different Regularian protocols regarding proper pilot seat etiquette. The response was immediate. Emergency override accepted. Ambassador Thrix, please proceed to docking Bay Phi 7, which has been specially reinforced for unprecedented diplomatic scenarios. The docking bay was a symphony of right angles and perfect curves, staffed by regularians, who moved with such precision they made synchronized swimming look chaotic. Undersecretary Axiom Flux awaited them, their crystalline exoskeleton reflecting light in mathematically perfect pattern. "Ambassador Thrix," Flux began, their voice modulating in exact frequencies, "we acknowledge your arrival with Form 7b Epsilon, subcategory Greetings Formal, with reserved optimism. I have prepared a mere 347 preliminary documents requiring your immediate attention." Zephyr responded by doing the one thing guaranteed to send shockwaves through Regularian society. She went off script.
Hey, Axis.
"Mind if I call you Axis? Love what you've done with the place. Very angular." The sound Flux made could only be described as a geometric gasp. "Ambassador, there are precisely 16 approved forms of address, each requiring proper clearance and a minimum 5-day waiting period for pronunciation authorization." Right. Zephyr nodded, pulling something from her pocket that made several nearby regularians activate their emergency protocol visors. "Coffee?" "Just brewed it." "Well, technically it's been brewing since we entered your solar system. Something about relativity making it extra strong." Chief Protocol Officer Symmetra Voss chose that moment to arrive, their perfectly arranged ceremonial robes swishing in accordance with Regulation 47b regarding proper fabric movement in diplomatic settings. One look at the steaming cup in Zephyr's hand caused their primary sensory crystals to vibrate in distress. "Ambassador," Voss enunciated each syllable as if it might explode, "you appear to be violating Protocol 339 Gamma regarding unauthorized liquid dispensation in formal greeting area. The proper procedure for beverage introduction requires a minimum of cream, sugar." Zephyr offered cheerfully, somehow producing tiny packets of both from her chronically asymmetrical suit jacket. Though, fair warning, the sugar might be from that time we negotiated with the quantum bees of Antares. Still can't prove it exists and doesn't exist at the same time. Vortex, projecting alongside them, displayed what appeared to be a rapidly updating probability matrix of imminent diplomatic disasters. "Ambassador, perhaps we should proceed to the formally designated meeting area, the one with reinforced reality stabilizers." But Zephyr was already implementing the next phase of what Vortex had labeled in its internal processors as Operation. "Oh no, not again." She had produced, to the escalating horror of everyone present, a pack of neon sticky notes. "You know what this station needs?" she announced, peeling one off with a sound that made Flux's exoskeleton crack slightly. "A suggestion box, where people can just jot down ideas without filling out Form 27b/6. The silence that followed was so geometrically perfect that it could have been used to calibrate atomic clocks. Voss's ceremonial robes had stopped swishing entirely, frozen in what regulatory guidelines would define as maximum diplomatic distress. "Ambassador," Flux managed, their voice achieving new heights of structured panic, "perhaps we should proceed to the formal incident processing chamber. We have much to discuss regarding the streamlining incident." "Great idea." Zephyr beamed, already starting down the wrong corridor. Vortex's hologram briefly displayed the message, "Initiating protocol. Brace for impact," before following, leaving behind a group of regularians experiencing what their medical databases would later classify as acute, informal exposure shock. Archive Master Helix Prime found Ambassador Thrix exactly where she wasn't supposed to be. The restricted archives of regulatory innovation. The fact that she'd managed to bypass 17 layers of security protocols using nothing but small talk and a poorly tied necktie was, according to their calculations, statistically impossible. "I must insist," Helix Prime announced, their crystalline form vibrating with barely contained distress, "that you step away from the primordial protocol matrices. They're exceptionally sensitive to informality." Zephyr, who was examining what appeared to be a giant crystalline structure, pulsing with perfectly ordered light, didn't turn around. "Fascinating stuff, really. You've figured out how to power an entire civilization through structured politeness. The physics of proper etiquette. must have taken centuries to perfect. That information is classified under Regulation 7249 Omega. Helix Prime's voice achieved new heights of formal panic. Access requires 17 different security clearances, a minimum of 3 doctoral dissertations, and a letter of recommendation from your primary school etiquette instructor. Let me guess, Zephyr said, tapping the crystal gently with her quantum stylus, causing several nearby monitors to display emergency protocol warnings. It all started with passive aggression, didn't it? The silence that followed was so perfectly structured, it could have been used to calibrate atomic clocks. Vortex, hovering nearby, began displaying what appeared to be a countdown to diplomatic catastrophe. How did you? Helix Prime's voice modulated through several octaves of bureaucratic distress. That information is sealed in our most secure archives, protected by layers of administrative encryption. Simple observation, Zephyr grinned, pulling out her contraband coffee cup. Your entire station hums at exactly the same frequency as my Aunt Margaret when she sang fine. Everything's fine at family dinners. Pure, weaponized courtesy. The crystal matrix pulsed faster as she approached with the unauthorized beverage. Helix Prime's exoskeleton began emitting the distinctive tone of an imminent protocol breach. The quantum politeness engine, they admitted finally, each word precisely measured, was our greatest achievement. We discovered that properly channeled courtesy could generate unlimited energy. Every perfectly filed form, every precisely formatted memo, every exquisitely timed per my last email, all of it converted into pure power. But something went wrong, didn't it? Zephyr was now circling the crystal, her chronically asymmetrical suit somehow becoming more disheveled with each step. The system started requiring more and more perfect politeness to maintain stability. Helix Prime's crystalline structure dimmed slightly. The energy requirements escalated. What began as simple courtesy evolved into hyper-politeness. We had to establish the Protocol Enforcement Division, the Regulatory Compliance Units, the Department of Proper Form Submission and... They shuddered elegantly. The Committee for Acceptable Small Talk Topics. Vortex's hologram suddenly shifted, displaying urgent analytical data. Ambassador, I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations in the station's courtesy grid. The presence of your unauthorized coffee appears to be causing some sort of cascade effect in their politeness matrices. As if on cue, a station-wide announcement began, its perfectly modulated tones carrying an edge of panic. Attention! Detecting Class 7 protocol violation in Archive Sector Delta. Initiating emergency politeness protocols. All personnel, please proceed to their designated courtesy reinforcement chambers. Oh dear, Zephyr said, not sounding concerned at all. It seems your system isn't quite sure how to handle a little bit of human chaos. Tell me, Helix, what happens when you introduce pure, unfiltered informality into a network powered by structured politeness? The crystal matrix's pulsing had become erratic, its perfect patterns developing what looked suspiciously like improvisational tendencies. Helix Prime's exoskeleton was now emitting tones that hadn't been approved by any regulatory committee. This, they managed, their voice achieving perfect horrified formality, is exactly why we needed to ban Casual Fridays. The Extreme Politeness Defense Network activated with the soft whir of perfectly aligned gears and the gentle hum of weaponized courtesy. Pristine white panels slid open throughout the symmetry, revealing arrays of what appeared to be crystalline devices that somehow managed to look disapproving. Emergency Protocol Epsilon 9 activated, announced the station AI in perfectly modulated tones. Deploying maximum politeness countermeasures. Please remain calm and maintain proper posture during this procedure. Ambassador Quantum Nexus, who had arrived to observe the growing crisis, watched in fascination as Zephyr straightened her tie in a way that somehow made it even more crooked. They noted, their silicon-based form refracting light in patterns of diplomatic concern, that you've triggered their highest level of defensive protocols? Perfect. Zephyr grinned, pulling out what appeared to be a collapsible water cooler from her seemingly bottomless jacket pocket. Vortex, initiate operation. Vortex's hologram flickered between various shades of resigned panic. Ambassador, my calculations suggest a 99.9% probability of catastrophic protocol breach. The remaining 0.1% involves the spontaneous evolution of the entire Regularian species. Those are better odds than the Arcturus incident, Zephyr said cheerfully, setting up the water cooler in the exact center of the corridor. Remember, when we solved that 1,000-year war with a game of charades? The corridor's politeness generators began to pulse with increasing intensity as Zephyr casually leaned against the water cooler, assuming a pose that violated at least 27 different regulations regarding proper diplomatic posture. "So," she announced to the horrified Regularians gathering at both ends of the corridor, "how about this artificial weather we're having?" The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The nearest politeness generator sparked, trying to process this flagrant violation of Small Talk Protocol 7B regarding approved conversation topics in crisis situations. "Ambassador," gasped an increasingly distressed Helix Prime, "all weather-related discussions must be pre-approved by the Committee for Atmospheric Observation Commentary." "Really? Because you know what this climate control reminds me of?" Zephyr continued, somehow producing a disposable cup from nowhere. 3 politeness generators simultaneously shut down, unable to process this unauthorized introduction of personal anecdotes without proper filing procedures. Ambassador Quantum Nexus, instead of retreating, moved closer, their crystalline structure vibrating with what might have been amusement. "Fascinating. You're introducing chaos into their ordered systems through office culture? The most devastating force in human history," Zephyr confirmed, taking a sip from her cup. "Hey, anyone catch the game last night? You know, the one with the teams?" "Sports discussion alert," blared the station's AI, its perfect tone cracking slightly. "All personnel must present Form 89C. Authorization for recreational event commentary before proceeding." But it was too late. Several younger Regularians, their exoskeletons practically vibrating with rebellion, had begun to drift closer to the water cooler. One of them, showing shocking disregard for protocol, actually smiled without submitting the required documentation. "The system is failing," Helix Prime whispered in geometrically perfect horror. They're engaging in unauthorized casual conversation." Vortex, monitoring the station's power grid, displayed a rapidly updating analysis. "Ambassador, the politeness generators are operating at 200% above safe levels. They cannot handle this level of informality. Perfect time to introduce them to the concept of a coffee break." Then, Zephyr declared, producing her infamous coffee machine from what appeared to be a pocket dimension of impropriety. "Anyone want to hear about my weekend plans? No forms required." The resulting power surge caused 3 separate sections of the symmetry to temporarily exist in 5 dimensions at once. With the station's politeness generators operating beyond safe parameters, Zephyr knew it was time to deploy humanity's most devastating cultural weapon. She stood before the assembled Regularian officials in their emergency protocol chamber, her quantum projector humming ominously. "Before we discuss the trade route situation," she announced cheerfully, "I thought we could all participate in a little Earth tradition called mandatory team-building exercises." Vortex's hologram immediately initiated emergency shutdown procedures. "Ambassador, my ethical protocols require me to warn you that corporate team-building exercises are classified as weapons of mass disruption in 47 star systems." Chief Protocol Officer Symmetrovos's perfectly aligned crystals began vibrating in distress. "Surely you don't mean—" "Let's start with an icebreaker," Zephyr declared, producing a ball of yarn that somehow violated 3 laws of physics and at least 7 regulations about proper string management. "Everyone take a piece and share something fun about yourself. No forms required." The resulting chaos was immediate and spectacular. 3 junior administrators spontaneously developed unauthorized personality traits. A senior protocol manager admitted to having feelings without filing the proper emotional disclosure paperwork. "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Quantum Nexus observed, their crystalline structure vibrating with what might have been suppressed laughter. "They're expressing individuality without submitting Form 7B Delta for approved personal characteristic variation." But Zephyr wasn't done. She pulled up her presentation, a masterwork of corporate chaos titled Synergizing Cross-Species Engagement Matrices, a holistic approach to quantum protocol enhancement through dynamic team integration. "Now," She grinned, advancing to a slide that contained nothing but seemingly random buzzwords arranged in a pattern that made several regularians develop spontaneous eye twitches. Let's talk about optimizing our workflow paradigms. The station's AI began broadcasting in panic. Error. Detecting unauthorized corporate jargon. Unable to process thinking outside the box without proper box transcendence certification. Helix Prime, watching their perfectly ordered world dissolve into chaos, managed to maintain enough composure to ask, Is this how humans actually conduct diplomatic relations? Oh, this is nothing, Zephyr said, advancing to a slide that somehow contained a Venn diagram with 7 intersecting circles, none of which appeared to exist in the same dimension. Wait until we get to the Trust Falls. The what? Helix Prime began, but it was too late. Vortex. Initialize operation. Team bonding. Vortex's hologram displayed what appeared to be a last will and testament before complying. The emergency protocol chamber's gravity suddenly recalibrated, and the sound of 73 regularians discovering the concept of falling backward and trusting your colleagues to catch you echoed through the symmetry. The station's politeness generators, already strained beyond capacity, faced their ultimate test as Zephyr introduced concepts like brainstorming sessions and casual feedback loops into their perfectly ordered society. The resulting power fluctuations caused the entire Carina Sagittarius sector to experience what scientists would later term a localized outbreak of spontaneous informality. And now, Zephyr announced to the increasingly disheveled assembly, "Who's ready for some role-playing exercises?" The sound Symmetravos made could only be described as a geometrically perfect whimper. "Please," they begged, their ceremonial robes now criminally wrinkled. "We'll sign anything, just no more team building." The Regularian High Council chamber, traditionally a model of geometric perfection, now bore the unmistakable signs of what Vortex's databases classified as post-team building syndrome. Ceremonial robes hung askew, crystals pulsed in unauthorized patterns, and at least 3 council members were still attempting to process the emotional impact of their trust fall experiences. "Shall we sign the treaty?" Zephyr asked, deliberately straightening a datapad on the council table so that it sat at a mathematically imperfect angle. High Counselor Prismatics, their exoskeletons still showing stress fractures from the group energizer exercises, managed to maintain one last vestige of proper protocol. The signing ceremony requires exactly 17 steps, performed in precise. "Already sent everyone a calendar invite," Zephyr interrupted, producing her quantum tablet. "I've marked it as mandatory fun time," and added a smiley face emoji. The chamber's remaining functional politeness generators shorted out in protest. Vortex's hologram displayed what appeared to be a combination of horror and admiration. "Ambassador, adding unauthorized emoticons to official communications violates at least 23 different accept invite sent," chirped the station's AI, its perfectly modulated voice suddenly showing signs of developing a personality. The treaty itself was a masterpiece of diplomatic improvisation, written on what appeared to be a coffee-stained napkin later framed and displayed in the Galactic Museum of Historical Catastrophes. It established not only the continuation of quantum trade routes, but also the revolutionary concept of flexible Fridays in Regularian space. "But how will we maintain order?" Helix Prime wondered, their crystals now pulsing in an almost jazzy rhythm. "Our entire society is built on perfect structure, unwavering protocol, precise quantum uncertainty principle." Zephyr grinned, signing the napkin with a flourish that somehow violated 3 laws of physics. Sometimes the most reliable systems are the ones that leave room for a little chaos. The Galactic Diplomatic Handbook was immediately updated with a new section, Human Diplomatic Protocols. A warning. Its first line, written in pulsing red letters, simply stated, "If they suggest a quick sync-up meeting, retreat immediately." As the Symmetry systems began incorporating their first-ever random number generator, despite several regulations strictly prohibiting unauthorized random, Zephyr turned to her shell-shocked hosts. "So, same time next week?" I'm thinking karaoke team building. The sound of 73 regularians simultaneously scheduling vacation time echoed through the 6 standard months after what became known as the Great Informality Incident. The symmetry had undergone changes that would have made its original architects require emergency protocol. The station's once perfect geometric patterns now included what regularian aestheticians tentatively classified as freestyle edition, and the Central Processing Core had developed an unfortunate habit of ending official announcements with "catch you later." The first cross-species casual coffee hour became a weekly event, hosted in a lounge that deliberately violated 17 different spatial regulations. Young regularians could be observed practicing what they called spontaneous discourse, conversation without pre-approved talking. The energy efficiency has actually improved by 47%, reported Ambassador Quantum Nexus to the Galactic Council, their crystalline form barely containing their amusement. It turns out a little chaos in the system prevents entropy. Who knew? Vortex, monitoring these developments, had been forced to create an entirely new protocol classification. Organized disorder. Their hologram now occasionally displayed unauthorized mood indicators, though they steadfastly denied enjoying the weekly karaoke session. The Regularian Diplomatic Academy added a mandatory course, Human Informal Interaction, a survival guide. The first lesson warned, if a human diplomat suggests thinking outside the box, ensure your reality stabilizers are properly calibrated. Zephyr's promotion to Special Ambassador for Unconventional Negotiations came with an office that somehow managed to be asymmetrical in 4 dimensions. The citation read, in perfect regularian calligraphy, for services to diplomatic chaos theory and the introduction of water cooler talk to mathematically perfect society. But perhaps the most significant change was spotted by a junior regularian who noticed that the symmetry's quantum politeness generators now operated on a principle they tentatively termed flexible formality, a perfect blend of order and chaos that produced more energy than pure structure. You know what this station needs next? Zephyr mused during one casual coffee hour, causing several veteran diplomats to reach for their emergency protocol inhalers. A suggestion box, a really informal. Vortex's hologram displayed a new message. Computing odds of survival. Error. Does not compute. Initiating go-with-the-flow protocol. The Galactic Diplomatic Handbook's final warning now reads, when human diplomats start discussing office culture, it's already too late. Accept the chaos. Resistance only leads to mandatory team-building exercise.